Today on Soma Says, we're joined by Michelle Smith, LPC, LMHC, LCMHC, a trauma informed psychotherapist who helps women move from survival mode to self trust. Blending evidence based therapy with somatic nervous system work, Michelle guides women to heal anxiety, set boundaries, and reclaim calm in midlife. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, Soma Says. I'm really excited to have our discussion today. Michelle, you've dedicated your career to helping people heal from trauma and anxiety. What first drew you to this type of work?
I think that I've always been drawn to be curious about the brain. I remember from a very early age, I would be curious about why do people do the things and behave the way they do and think the way they do. I can recall my first psychology class in high school as a pivotal point where I felt so eager and excited to learn more about that. From there, it was just exploring, okay, how can my strengths support this goal of helping others with their mental health? And it delved into me becoming a therapist. And I'm so privileged to be able to do what I do.
How does your multidisciplinary background influence your approach to therapy?
I think that it's very important because I truly come from a space of mind-body connection, right? So we know that what happens, especially in the subconscious realm, is not just something small to change. So we have to really think about all of these components when we're working with patients, thinking about how is their physical health, how is their mental health, so it's such a holistic thing to help somebody rewire their brain. It's not just one facet, it's all the facets all at once.
How does healing from the inside out, what does that mean to you?
Absolutely. It's a great question. Being able to, when I talk to clients about changing belief systems, I always talk about maybe perhaps your external world doesn't change much, right? Maybe your relationship is the same. But what it means to heal from the inside out is that my perception, my lens of everything that I'm experiencing has shifted, right? So I might wake up and I might say, I'm recognizing those triggers that used to be really intense. Those don't feel as unmanageable now. I'm thinking less about this and I'm thinking more about hopefulness, or I'm feeling more confident. I'm feeling more easy to be able and effortless to be able to do these things in my day-to-day life. So it might not necessarily change the external from there, but even if nothing changes externally, what happens is you change and the way that you perceive everything changes. And that is awesome to be able to see with clients and patients.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm an internist. I'm not a therapist or a psychiatrist. The change that I see is very inspiring and spurs me to continue doing what I do.
Yeah.
You often talk about the body remembering what the mind forgets. So how does trauma live in the body and how can therapy begin to release it?
That's a great question. So when we experience, I think that there's a big misconception around trauma, right? What we know now about the brain is that the event itself doesn't really necessarily matter. You and I can experience the same thing, and one of us can come out with trauma and the other cannot. When we indicate something as a threat, an experience, a memory, a circumstance in our life, it stores in the brain differently than other memories. Most memories go into that hippocampus area of the brain, and they store and we're able to recall them. And some of them are good, some of them are not so good, but they're not as impactful as a trauma memory where that actually goes into that fear-based center of the brain and creates this ripple effect of perhaps different behaviors or belief systems or neural pathways that almost feel like a volcano. It feels like it erupts. And clients a lot of the times feel very frustrated with that. They feel like, why can't I stop this? This feels almost out of my control. There's this response there. And so being able to understand, first off, the neuroscience of trauma, teaching clients psychoeducation around that, knowing that this is important to be able to work. We have to build that stabilization and then eventually rewiring those subconscious pathways when they're ready to do that work.
So how do you help your clients identify those kind of hidden patterns?
Sure. A lot of it is helping them guide them to that self-awareness. It's much more powerful for them to recognize that, providing tools, perhaps utilizing assessments and gauging their progress with different psychoeducational tools. A lot of it is understanding those patterns. What did you learn? What were the narrative? Okay, you're recognizing when we talk about trauma, it's three-pronged. So it's past, present, future. So you're recognizing in the present, this is coming up for you. Is there a tie to the past? Can you recall a memory? Can you recall a pattern or something that was said? And perhaps that's where we might need to do some deeper therapeutic work with whether it's EMDR or clinical hypnosis or other subconscious techniques that go deeper than just that 5% of the brain. We use that 5% of that conscious brain all the time. 50% of our brain is that subconscious.
So, what's the difference then between coping and actually healing?
Oh, great question. Coping can be difficult. Coping happens a lot because with trauma, you might feel like you have a period of time where it doesn't bother you, right? So I'm living my life. I don't think about that a lot. I'm moving through life and I'm moving forward with my goals. And
Mhm.
then if something happens that feels similar, the people, places, things, the sensations in the body, the memory feels activated essentially. That can reactivate this response that even if you haven't felt it in years or months, it's still there. And so if you're coping, you're probably able to deal with day-to-day life. You might be very productive. You might actually be a lot of my clients are very successful in what they do. So healing, thriving, it's not just learning how to survive. With trauma, you've really worked hard to learn how to survive. You know how to do that. No problem. How do you now live? How do you now let go of those protective mechanisms that you've learned and have been so deeply rooted? How do you
Yeah.
trust and accept uncertainty of life? That's a lot of the times a whole lot harder for folks with trauma.
Yeah. I find that for a lot of people, the coping mechanisms, the defenses, what have you, are the things that allow them to survive. But as they get older, those are the very things that then just crush them and they don't know how to escape it.
Yes. And you see that tie a lot with trauma, right? With PTSD, substance abuse, it might be drugs or alcohol, or it might just be overworking or struggling to rest. I see that so much with my trauma clients where rest has become a unsafe thing to do because of whatever subconscious pathways are there. So it's really learning how to unlearn those things, how to build a new belief system around them. It takes time. It takes intentionality. It takes willingness to go to that. If you had a deep wound, you have to go to the deepest part of that wound. And it's not easy work. Yeah.
I always tell patients, as for the length of time it took for you to get here, it may take maybe not the same amount of time, but it will take a good amount of time for you to heal from this, to learn from this.
Yeah.
So I always say, don't expect like a miracle after a few sessions that you'll automatically feel better. You were
100%.
talking about the brain and the emotions and where things get stored. So, how does the nervous system impact our emotional regulation, our relationships, and even our physical health?
When we have experienced trauma, our body gets into our window of tolerance shifts. And so what we can tolerate now is it's more comfortable a lot of the times for these folks to be in this fight or flight response.
Mm.
Our parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest, that ability to relax and recoup, that becomes very challenging to activate. And so I'm living in maybe this perpetual state of whether it's dissociation or hypervigilance or different challenges of that sort. Clients who are stuck in that may struggle with having healthy or even understanding what is a healthy relationship dynamic because for so long I've had this model, right? So I have to really think deeper about that. I have to build that stabilization with my nervous system. And a lot of times with clients, it starts really early. I'm asking, okay, are you eating when you're hungry? Are you drinking water when you're thirsty? Are you going to the bathroom when you need to? Which seems simple, but it is. If you repress those basic needs, you're saying to your nervous system, I'm not safe enough to take care of this need right now. So it's really
Right.
reestablishing safety is a big starting point with my clients, if that makes sense.
So, how do you guide someone then to begin to create a sense of safety in their body after years of chronic stress or hypervigilance?
So there's a multifaceted approach here, right? I think the therapeutic relationship is a big part of that. I am trying to model that relationship and calm for them in sessions. I'm also helping them build awareness. So what do you notice? What does the escalation look like? Can you pause? Can you take a breath? Can you notice? How does the body respond? How does that go into your narratives, your thinking, these different action steps? I'm helping them understand perhaps belief systems around that and building this awareness of their inner world. And then we're resourcing them. So we're teaching them perhaps deep breathing, different mindfulness strategies, different things like bilateral stimulation with EMDR, being able to build their toolbox is what I like to say, because as one tool may not always do the same job on any given day. So we really want those clients to feel confident that, hey, things are going to show up, life is going to happen, but I feel like I can manage it. So that is what we do is we really start bulking that up at first.
What role do you see mindfulness in your practice and then body-based awareness play in restoring calm and resilience in your patients?
So I think reconnecting with the body is a lot of that resourcing work, and we might utilize somatic therapy for that. I have a lot of clients who it feels safer to intellectualize, to stay in this area. And then that might be because of a sense of control or feeling like if I stay thinking about it, I can fix it. So they might research or get another book or go vent to their friend. But what exactly is happening as you're talking about that experience? I'm noticing it might be something like, I'm noticing your jaw is really clenched as we're talking about this. Can you tell me about what's happening there? Or whatever it is. And they might be like, wow, I didn't even realize that, Michelle. But now I'm recognizing there is so much tension here. So we'll pause, we'll ground, we'll take deep breaths. I will encourage them to figure out how to incorporate mindfulness into your day and making it flexible, because you might not have 2 hours to sit on a meditation couch, right? You might need to incorporate into your day to day so it actually can be a consistent part of your self-care practice.
Yeah, of course. In my practice, I see a lot of women. I'm a women's health specialist. A lot of women that I see struggle with perfectionism and guilt. And sometimes they feel guilty because they can't exercise, they can't meditate, because they can't spare half an hour or whatever time they want to devote. How can those women, let's say, who are listening to my podcast, begin to release those patterns and practice self-compassion instead?
There's a lot of expectation for women to do all the things and to also stay feeling good, feeling happy, and not experiencing negative emotions. So there's a lot of narrative societal wise that first we may need to recognize or notice from your past narrative. At the same time, I think we want to build in strategies to your day to day to interrupt your cycle of behaviors, thoughts. It may start with, sometimes I'll tell clients to set a timer for 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, night. Just do a body scan, check in. Okay, I have some tension here. Not necessarily judging it, curious about that. Let me notice that. And let me just build comfort within that discomfort, because at first it's going to feel very discomforting. Your brain's going to go do the monkey mind thing where it's going to say, hey, you forgot to put this on the grocery list. Don't forget about the event later. And that's the work that you're doing with mindfulness, is not necessarily to have this mountain view where there's no thoughts, but that you can notice that distraction. You can keep moving forward. You can be with that sensation. And so it's really building up that tolerance over time. It might be washing your hands, noticing the sensations of the soap as it suds, right? So we start there, and then we can build that up because we want it to be realistic. We want it to be manageable, and we don't want you to feel even more flooded with this type of work.
So you were talking about the timer. Is that something that kind of like it just reminds you to check in?
Sometimes clients need that because we're so in automatic mode. And maybe you don't. I think it depends on where the client is coming, right? Each client is very unique and their story is very different. And some folks do need that physical reminder. For others, it might be like a visual. Sometimes I'll talk about, okay, what's your signifier? Do you have a picture of something or a reminder on your phone? Sometimes we do need those reminders at first. And then over time, of course, we want to build that into just a regular habit. But if that helps you to just think of, oh yeah, my lunch break. Oh yeah, how am I feeling? What emotions are coming up? Okay, I'm noticing this. If that helps to build that habit, do that. Use the resources that you have, essentially.
Yeah. So in that same vein, you were talking about being aware, right, of let's say a pain, a discomfort, how you're feeling. So with your clients, how do you emphasize that healing isn't about fixing ourselves? It's about understanding ourselves. And why is that distinction so important?
That is so important because I always talk about this process of breaking down the layers of the onion, right? So we are not fixing, we are not healing to become this idealized version. We're actually returning to the self that we talk about in IFS work. We talk about this self that is rooted in confidence, compassion, self love, all of the curiosity, all of those things. That self has been part of you forever. And what happens is the world starts bringing in these different narratives or these different beliefs or experiences. And then I learned, okay, this part of me maybe is not as approved as this part. So really, I talk about this unbecoming to become. Like we're letting go of these layers. We're really breaking them down. How helpful are they now to this future self you want to be? How unhelpful are they? How do we rewire that if it's not working for you? We are not necessarily becoming this perfectionism self. We're coming back to our authentic self, the you were like when you were a child and you enjoyed doing things without fear, without judgment. That is a lot of the times the segue into that for clients if they don't know what that means.
What are some of the biggest myths that you see about mental health and trauma healing?
Oh my gosh, so many.
Right.
First one is to go to therapy is you must be very unhealthy. You must be very messed up and you must have to be in therapy forever. I'm very much of the practice that I am assessing your needs and your goals from the first session that you're coming in. Because the
Mhm.
goal is that you get these tools, that you feel confident. Your healing doesn't stop when you stop therapy. And a good therapist is thinking about that the entire time, thinking about your discharge from the moment I meet you to make sure that you are getting your needs met and that therapy doesn't become a crutch for you. So I think those are a big ones. With trauma, this person was so much worse off than me. So is it fair for me to have trauma? Can I really label this as trauma? And so I see that a lot because there's the stigma around trauma. Trauma can only be certain circumstances. So those are big ones that I see.
So, in these moments, right, what are some of your favorite grounding techniques that maybe you can share with our audience?
Oh, yeah. I use a lot of touch sensation. Like if you
Mhm.
see my desk, I have a ton of different like rocks that I'll use, or I'll have clients focus on kind of a color or a sensation or hold something in my hand and say, okay, tell me everything you're noticing about this right now. Or if they're utilizing mental grounding, sometimes I'll have them use a category that they love and I'll say, okay, tell me every single baseball team. And then it's a good distraction. You're focusing on something that you is in your mind, but it's allowing you to ground to the present moment. Touch, sound, sensation. I have singing bowls on my desk. Sometimes I'll just use those to allow clients to notice that sound and really focus in on the sound feels like it's coming from here versus here or what have you. Typically, we figure out what the clients like. Do they like physical grounding? Do they like mental? Do they like more the soothing grounding? So we play around and find where their sweet spots are.
So, for some of your patients who are new to therapy, what should they look for in a therapist that specializes in trauma or anxiety?
So that's a really good question because I think every therapist is very unique in their tailored approach. And perhaps they have different strengths and different needs. And perhaps one client would be great with one type of therapist and not another type of therapist. As far as trauma goes, you really want to be curious about what is your training within trauma. Trauma informed is one thing, but trauma specific modalities are different. So those are those that are getting to that deeply rooted subconscious layer. Perhaps EMDR, clinical hypnosis, IFS, somatic work. Those are some examples, not all of the examples. But you might want to ask, where is your training in that? What is the population that you serve? How do you see success rates in your clients? And how do you continue to get education around that? What can I
Mhm.
keep adding to my toolbox? And I think you want a clinician who is excited and wanting to grow in that practice and support you with your unique needs. The relationship is so important. So you really want to feel seen in a first session. I always talk to clients about that. I might not be the right fit for you, and that's okay. I want you to be honest about that. And so if you feel a sense of safety, feel a sense of trust, that's a good starting point as well.
How do you integrate evidence-based practices with intuitive and or holistic tools in your practice?
The big part of my practice
Okay.
because I'm always trying to assess the client's needs, how they're responding, how their body is responding to particular types of treatment. I'm utilizing the evidence-based practices that I've been trained on, but I'm also watching the client's response to that. So I'm noticing your breathing. I'm noticing oh, you just had a shallow breath there. Oh, there's tension here. So that may be intuitive, but that may also be growth in the awareness that I'm building of the client as that grows. So it's really trusting myself too and making sure that I'm utilizing those techniques when they're ready for them, not pushing them to my own agenda if they're not stabilized for that. I might have a really great tool, right? But you might not be in that space where you're ready for that tool. So I have to really assess that as well. And that's where that intuition and that conversation and that collaboration with the client comes in. So it's really this beautiful dance that we hold together of
Yeah.
safety and trust.
Yeah. I think that's really important to highlight because I just came off of a podcast with another therapist, and we were briefly talking about AI and some of the challenges there
Yeah.
as their mock therapist can be dangerous,
Yes.
frankly.
Yes. It can be very, especially if you're somebody who is maybe trauma triggered, susceptible to hallucinations, delusions, psychosis, right? That can be very unsettling because the AI is programmed to keep you using AI.
Right.
Wants you to keep using that. And it may say something that actually might trigger unsafe circumstances or behaviors, where if you don't have that awareness, you might think, great, that sounds great. And let me end my relationship without thinking more about this. Whereas a therapist would be more curious about what does that mean for you and encourage and utilize all this information that I know about you, the narratives, and really help you be aware of those decisions. So I've had a lot of conversations with clients about that as well, for sure.
What, in which vein? Like, what were they saying to you that they felt that they can have ChatGPT as their therapist and they would be fine?
I think different spectrums, but yes, being safe with it, right? How are you using?
Yeah.
Because AI can actually be a tool, right? If you're using it intentionally, you might be able to get some ideas around your coping strategies or have resources that you may never thought of, right? So I'm helping them engage with it in a way that feels manageable, that feels safe, not to necessarily fear it entirely, but a lot of the times I'm
Okay.
talking about that balance with them. Clients who are coming in who might be newer, I may advise against just going to
Right.
GPT alone, right? Clients who I've worked with a little longer, I might be teaching them to have a healthy relationship with that age.
Can you give us an example?
Absolutely. Client, for example, had a journal experience and they're curious about, can you share more about maybe the themes or the narratives in this that I might not be noticing? And maybe that can give some information. Or I've been utilizing this coping strategy. I'm noticing this is working. Can you share 10 more coping strategies that may work? And then you can figure out, okay, does that feel true to you? I always talk to clients about you're the expert on you. I may be the expert in mental health as you're the expert in medicine, but they know themselves the best. So
Right.
utilizing their intuition when they're reading that information, if something doesn't feel right, probably not right. And so
Yeah.
take what works, leave what doesn't, essentially.
Yeah. I think AI just kind of mirrors what we're putting into it. And I don't know if I would say it's a 2D, but it's not necessarily seeing the whole picture because we have a story in our head, but at times we need to challenge that story. It's not always correct.
Yes.
So whatever we're putting into ChatGPT is what they're spitting back or a version of that.
Yes.
So it can be very tricky. So through the work that you've done, what has it taught you about human resilience?
Oh my gosh, so much. How much the human can manage is tremendous. How much the brain can go through and how you can still heal and thrive even when you've gone through immense hardship. One of the first books I ever read as a graduate student was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And that is something that I return to year after year as a reminder of how much the brain can endure, how we can still have that choice, that thought of choice, even in the most strenuous circumstances, as Viktor Frankl went through in Auschwitz, and how we can still heal from these things. So it's tremendous to see that because it's a reminder of why I do what I do. When I get a chance to see that resilience, when folks are recognizing their own resilience and they're able to feel a sense of empowerment through that instead of being in a victim mentality or whatever they're telling themselves, that is my goal, is to help them create a healthy meaning of their hardships and pain that we all unfortunately will go through as humans.
Yeah, exactly. which brings me back to my original point is all of us should be in therapy, at least in parts of our life, maybe not all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
For anyone who is in the helping profession, we are lending a part of ourselves and it's giving. And at times it can deplete us. So even if we have had the perfect childhood, the perfect parents, we've never had any trauma, if we lived this blessed life, I think we should still be in therapy because of the profession that we're in. And it baffles me that's not integrated as part of nursing, as part of medicine, as part of, I know in certain psychological programs, psychiatric programs, like residents who are in psychiatry, that is part of their graduate program, but it's not universal, which is still baffling to me.
I think that it's important because you need to think about how you're showing up in helping professions. What biases are you bringing? What judgments are you bringing? How can I be the person that they need to be able to heal, right? I need to be curious about how am I preventing burnout? Because it's so easy to get into compassion fatigue, especially in the helping professions. I have a lot of doctors, nurses in my caseload who have this same experience where they say, wow, I wish I would have done this 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago, because I would have been a different version of myself and I would have known these things. And then I always tell them, don't on yourself. Would have should have. So that compassion seeps in, but I agree. It could be a great resource if people would be willing.
Yeah, of course. So if you were to give, let's say someone is listening and they feel stuck in their journey and unsure where to start in their healing journey, what would you say to them?
That's normal. It's okay to be where you're at. Be gentle, meet yourself where you're at. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to wait until you have XYZ thing. You don't have to just get started. And a lot of the times our brain kind of gets in the way of that because we overestimate how much effort getting started will be. And we underestimate how much positive feelings or hopefulness may come from that behavior. So getting started in any capacity, what do you need for that? Do you need accountability? Do you need somebody to say, hey, did you make that call to the therapist? What do you need to make that jump over that hurdle? Because once you do that, motivation doesn't come from, it's not a feeling. I think that's another myth that comes a lot is when I feel motivated. You're not actually going to feel motivated until you get started. And then when you get started, that's when that feeling triggers. So what do you need to get over this hump? Let me hold your hope rope. Sometimes I'll tell clients that if you can't hold it, I'll hold it for you for a little bit. I'll give it back when you're ready. So we got to make a plan for that. And a lot of the times it may be asking for help and getting over that hurdle, getting to therapy. And you don't have to be perfect. Just get started, essentially.
Can you share a journey about one of your patients, obviously anonymous, of course,
Sure.
that was transforming, really inspired you to do what you do?
Oh my gosh, so many. So many. I think the stories around women are very impactful to me, right? I've done a lot of research around the nervous system and what women need. And women need more oxytocin and pleasure-based focuses to be able to thrive, right? So I have a couple different women that come to mind who came to me very hyper productive, very successful in what they did, struggled so much to be compassionate towards themselves, take a rest, enjoy life, be present in any capacity. It felt like that was the biggest thing, biggest barrier that they couldn't overcome. And then being able to work with them to understand where did that come from? How did you understand that? How do you start integrating these things? And then seeing them say, you know what, Michelle, 2 years ago, this used to feel like this, and now this feels like this. And that's so wild. I never thought I would be there. Those are the moments where I'm like, this is why I do what I do. I love to sit in those.
And just for the purposes of illustrating to our audience, like how long did it take for the examples that you talked about for them to see that difference?
I think the one that I'm talking about, I think they were in treatment for about 5-6 months and they felt like they got their goals met. The other ones, perhaps a little longer. And I think it really depends on how deep do you want to go, right? So we can stop at any point of this where you feel like you've got what you needed. And some clients may want to go even deeper. So some of them may have stayed in treatment for a year or 2 years or even longer. But the ones that I'm talking about specifically, probably in that like year to 2 to 3 year range.
As you probably know, that there is a deficit of mental health in our country. It was always there, and the pandemic just opened Pandora's box, and I don't think it's truly ever recovered. At least where I am, at some point, and this was a few years before the pandemic, I at least had some go-tos, right? Where I could say, okay, see this person, they may be able to make room for you. Now, even as a physician, right, I'm like directing patients to so many different channels to be able to find a therapist. So for someone who is seeking trauma-based therapist, what should they be looking for?
Definitely, first and foremost, the training, right? There's a difference between trauma informed, which means I understand trauma in the brain, and trauma based care. And so you want to make sure that they have those trainings in trauma based care, especially if you're wanting to rewire that subconscious pathway. Also, you want to find therapy that's accessible. So if you're somebody who it's going to be very hard to get to the office, you may want to look into virtual therapy. A lot of therapy modalities are just as evidence-based and effective over virtual telehealth as they are in other things, making it flexible, making it doable. And of course, the safety aspect, the trust aspect, trusting your gut. If you feel like you get on with a therapist and they're dismissing you, interrupting you, not hearing you, not giving you that presence, it's probably a good sign to try again. And that can be very frustrating for clients. I have a lot of clients come to me who said, I almost didn't try this again because I've been so burned. And that can actually create trauma responses that now we have to require. So it's a hard journey. It's a hard process. It's not easy to find the right fit.
No, it's not. It's not. And with the lack of therapists, not every therapist is like yourself.
Right.
So unfortunately, just like not every physician is like me.
Exactly.
Obviously, that's a joke, but
I get you.
so this was a fascinating conversation. I really enjoyed we've discussed. I always like to ask a few not deep personal questions, but just so we understand that you're a human being too. So tell us about one self-care ritual that keeps you grounded, Michelle.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So I've been practicing yoga and mindfulness for 12 plus years. That's been a staple of my self-care practice. I found that to be such a positive thing to get into my body. Now I'm very rooted in Ashtanga yoga, which is a very ritualistic, same poses every day. You return to the same poses every day. You meet your body where you're at in that pose. One day it might feel good, one day it might not feel good. So that is something that I try to do 6 to 7 days a week. I also have started weightlifting, which is really good for women in their 30s and 40s. I'm sure you know this. So I add that to my ritual, which has built strength and helped with sitting so much because of course, I sit so much during the day. So that has been a staple for my physical care. And I think the mindfulness aspect and the meditation aspect that comes is a mental health focus that I utilize. So those are major staples for me right now.
And a mantra or a quote that you live by?
I think just that uncertainty is a part of life. Acceptance, you have to learn how to accept. And I don't know if that's a quote or if that's just my mantra as I think about what am I helping clients to do, right? I'm helping them to understand, how do we manage the uncertainty of life? How do we accept what we cannot control? And those are two big areas that I think about all the time and I'm always coming back to. So that's something that I think about too is, am I dealing with uncertainty today? Am I dealing with acceptance today? I'm a human, what I'm trying to help clients with and what I'm helping myself with as well.
And if my audience were to look for you, your website, any social media handles, where would they go?
I'm so glad to get a chance to meet with you and that this information will help your listeners, your patients. My website, www.michellesmithlmhc.com. That's the best way to find me. You can schedule a free consult with me. If you're curious about my services, but not sure where to go, you can schedule right on there, a free consult, no questions asked. I'm also on Instagram at Michelle Smith LMHC. You can also find me on Facebook, Michelle Smith Counseling. I hope to be able to connect with you.
They will too. This is great. You have a lot of good energy. It comes through very well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I hope to be able to collaborate with you in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you.